Lovely to see you all again. Okay, so I'm going to talk about what didn't go in penile imperialism, maybe next time. More perversions. Now, the main reason for writing penile imperialism was to place the men's sexual perversion of transvestism into its historical and political context. I was concerned that many of those involved in the struggle against the transvestites' rights movement in order to defend women's sex-based rights didn't fully understand that this so-called liberation movement was based on a sexual perversion. There were many, until quite recently, who believed there was some kind of thing as true trans, that is, men who by some biological miracle had elements of womanhood in their heads that forced them to wear women's knickers. I needed to explain more fully that this was not what was going on. Up till the 1990s, men's dressing up in women's clothes and adoption of what they saw as women's activities or body parts was understood by the scientists of sex as a sexual perversion, a form of masochism in which men got excited by pretending to be the underclass of women. Being a woman was the most degrading thing they could imagine, and therefore the most exciting. Now, but in the 1990s, an activist movement of transvestites developed, started in the US. It said that seeing their practice as sexual was insulting. It was nothing to do with sex, but derived from their having an essence of gender in the head, or what they called gender identity. This gender identity was something they could not change, it was part of them. They needed the right to the expression of their gender, i.e. to imitate women in public places, particularly places previously segregated by sex. And in the mid-1990s, they drew up a Bill of Transgender Rights, which has become all of the legislation on gender identity that we see today. Very quickly, because they were powerful, white, heterosexual men, some of them lawyers and judges, they were able to influence legislatures into creating laws which allowed them to be recognized as women and practice their fetishes in the parliament. They were greatly aided by attaching their demands to lesbian and gay rights. And by the late 1990s, there was considerable public acceptance that lesbians and gay men were an oppressed constituency of persons, with the right to access the same opportunities as heterosexuals, e.g. marriage, which, as you know, I don't agree with, and the right to adopt and buy in children through the enslavement of women and surrogacy. By attaching themselves, the white heterosexual middle-class men managed to hoodwink the public and legislatures into believing they needed the very special right of pretending to be members of the sex class. Only they were more oppressed than women, they argued, and more subject to violence and discrimination. I wrote a book about the problems that transvestite rights movement created for women, in particular, in 2014 in Gender Hurts, but it was very clear to me more recently that many people, even many feminists, have been influenced by transvestite propaganda into believing that these men were a special oppressed class of persons who carried the burden of having a female soul in a male body and required sympathy and to have all their demands met. They did not want to be seen as sexual perverts because they would not get their rights that way. The public wouldn't like it. Very few understood that it was just about the sex. In a very short time, historically, a whole new ideology had been created and accepted. And I needed to write a book explaining how this change occurred. I looked at the history of the sexological construction of male and female sexuality and the way in which the perversions, later to be called paraphilias, because perversions were seen as a negative term, and almost entirely confined to men, were understood by the scientists of sex in the late 19th century. I showed how from the sexual revolution of the 60s and 70s, which assured men full and easy access to women and created the pornography industry, the normalization of men's perversions arose. As a result of the success of gay liberation, movements for paedophilia and sadomasochism developed. Transvestism came a bit later, all on the coattails of gay rights. Always, when a book comes out, because the publication process is often quite slow, particularly with this one, and not the fault of my publishers, you think of all the things that you should have included. There have been huge developments in the transvestites' rights movement and in the feminist reaction to it since the book was completed in 21. And some of these I talked about earlier at this event. I explained in the book how men went about normalizing their fetishes and perversions and turning them into human rights. In the case of paedophiles, sadomasochists, transvestites, and nappy fetishists, the campaigns of normalization included changes in the law to protect them, changes in nomenclature to remove stigma, changes in the way the medical profession understood them, and the demand for public space in the streets, in the media, in popular culture. These tactics, which I describe in detail in the book, are presently being adopted by male perverts who have other sexual enthusiasms. And an important point of the campaign of normalization is that the public, that is us, are forced to be witness to the perversions that's particularly sexually exciting to these men. They force us to see them. If we are shocked, if we don't find it okay, it gives them erections, right? That's a crucial part of what they do, and the excitement. If we were all to roll over and say, do what you damn well want, which we can't, they would probably stop. Now, it must always be remembered, though, that men with one perversion are likely to possess more than one fetish. Some transvestites are also nappy fetishists and imitate female babies, for instance. They may also be into transableism, that is wanting legs cut off, backs broken. And the men with perversions tend to have clusters of them. So if they have one, they will most likely have one or several others. I researched a variety of fetishes when I was writing the book, and though they were fascinating and fitted the aim of showing how men's sexual perversions were being propagated and normalized, I knew I had to be selective. I decided to cover nappy fetishes. There was no room to cover feederism, furries, rushophiles, and so on in any detail. And enormous range of these perversions, all with websites and fan groups and so on and so on. You know, and shops, especially equipment, it's huge out there, and the special pornography and so on. So I shall use this opportunity to look at a couple of versions that I missed out, and will include, perhaps, if I were to write on this topic again. One example of normalization is that of furries and plushophiles, groups that seem to be swiftly amalgamating, so the two are coming together. In theory, the furries are who are mainly men, usually young, and perhaps socially inadequate, who dress up as furry animals, and they attend conventions and street parades. That's in theory who the furries are. The research suggests that they're mainly men, though women may join at the behest of their boyfriends, or they become involved commercially by making the costumes. Women always make the costumes, you understand. The majority of the men are gay, and there are considerable crossovers with transvestism, in fact. Researchers found that men who are furries are 7 times more likely to have problematic gender identities. Isn't that extraordinary? So they're very, very close together. And as I mentioned before, men with one are always likely to have more than one. In theory, there's a difference between furries and plushophiles. Furries are seen as not necessarily sexually motivated, whereas plushophiles, who have holes in their costumes to admit the penis, certainly are. Right? So in theory, there's a difference. But in fact, the groups are likely to mix together, and establishing a difference is quite hard. The appearance of plushophiles in popular supposed mental health advice magazines online is evidence of the transformation of this perversion from something niche to a mainstream activity. Better Health, for instance, in 2016 explains that many people are plushophiles and they need not suffer isolation. They should join online plushophile support. And then an example of the normalization of plushophilia is a piece in The Guardian in 2019. It's always The Guardian, isn't it? In its series called My Life in Sex, why the hell have they got a series called My Life in Sex? It's a newspaper. In that, a plushophile explains that he's sexually excited by stuffed toys because he learned to masturbate on his teddy bear when he was 10 years old. He says, dating has been difficult. One girlfriend complained, you're in bed with a naked woman and you're holding a stuffed tiger. Another wished to hide my companions and hoped for the day when I would get rid of them. For a while I thought I couldn't enjoy normal sex, but I learned to appreciate the fear of skin on skin. My current partner is very understanding. She's accepted my girls. Of course, it's very similar to sex dolls. And even allows me to spend nights with them in our spare room. They're very, very similar to the sex doll phenomenon. As with all the other perversions that men engage in, women suffer. Here the female partner has to service the man's fetish. That is always the case. Her interest in an equal relationship with another fully present human being is just brushed aside. women must always accept, despite whatever mental distress is caused to them by trying to do that. The fact that plushlophiles have made it to The Guardian, and not just to the millions of posing mental health magazines online in which they're flourished, suggests that the degree of respectability that this perversion has achieved, normalization is happening at speed. Now, I'll just talk about some other aspects of plushophilia and the furry fandom. Now, several commentators have written about the possibilities of child sexual abuse by furries whose costumes can be attractive to children. And the anonymity of the men is protected. They're behind animal masks, nobody knows who they are. Whereas in researching furries, it was easy to find media accounts of links to the abuse of children, and children are attracted to the animals, you see. Yeah. One in 2017 was of a furry party in Pennsylvania, to which a child was trafficked for sexual use. The report says members of a sex ring dressed up the child in a Tony the Tiger costume and took turns sexually abusing him. In the US in 2019, a furry heterosexual couple were arrested for sexually abusing a boy of 15 who they dressed in a goat costume and kept on a leash. The victim explained that the man would dominate both his female partner, who dressed as a cat, and the teenage boy. So he had double. That was good for him. Now, the furry fandom, as the network of furries is called, is being normalized in a similar fashion to other male perversions, and taking its place within the rainbow alliance of men's hate groups that oppose women's sex-based rights. There was a call put out for a special furry protest at a Standing for Women event in Glasgow in February this year. Coincidentally, furries were having a convention in Glasgow that weekend. In fact, apparently, only one furry turned out to protest. Feminist critics in the UK have pointed out the links that some significant trans activists in Scotland have to the furry fandom. And some significant men wishing to be councillors or politicians are involved in the group. I mean, it's everywhere. Furries are everywhere now. Right? Once the fetishists move offline and hold their conventions in respectable city centre hotels, it's clear that they're achieving success in bringing their proclivities into the public realm. They no longer masturbate in their costumes in their bedrooms and in front of their computers. They can make demands. Some furries decide that they're really the animals they like to imitate and may cross over with trans speciesists, the men and some women who like to live as their favourite animal. Trans speciesists are on the way to demanding the right to act out what they call their animal fur-sona, as their animal persona is called. Now, both furries and plushophiles are likely to be prompted by the great amount of porn directed at or created by them to take on the identity of the animal they find most attractive. And identity is very important. In a news item when I was researching all this, I did come across a man who was sacked from his job at a checkout in a supermarket because he thought he was a wolf and would not refrain from roaring. I expect we will see more and more examples of these men demanding special rights and coming out into public and political space in the near future. We're not going to be surprised at any of it, are we? None of us are going to be surprised at anything. You will probably be familiar with the imitation of animals from Gay Pride Parade, where some men will parade on their hands and knees attached to leads and in black leather dog costumes. This is a particularly gay perversion in a community of gay sadomasochists, in which some men are masters and the men they control are called pups. But these men prefer black leather to fake fur. Another example of a perversion that was being normalised that I researched but did not include in penile imperialism is naturism or nudism. And probably you're thinking, but yes, it is. I would argue sexual perversion. I found that naturist organisations in the UK were gaining confidence and demanding rights. A piece in Wales Online says that naturist numbers in the UK have doubled in a decade. There were articles in the newspaper about how naturists had the right to walk naked across the hills and vales of the UK. There was no law against it. The future we have to look forward to is naked men shopping in the supermarket and sitting opposite on the train. There is apparently no law against it as long as there is no harassing purpose, in which case it would be indecent exposure. How are we going to prove the difference? If it's just a man being naked, then that's fine. The naturist activists all seem to be men. I was reading the British Naturism website, which contained then, all now removed unfortunately, pieces and commentary about the difficulty of getting women to join the naturists. A woman complained on the Naturist Action Group website that the activists were all men. She posted a 2012 article from the Naturist Life magazine, which stated that the gender imbalance is an undeniable feature. of Naturism. In 2020, all 6 members of the Naturist Action Group Management Committee were men. The gender, meaning sex imbalance, was so marked that the organisation British Naturism launched a campaign to get more women in called Women in Naturism. Such an attractive idea. Now, the campaign website explains that more men attend events, visit beaches and naturist holiday resorts, making it appear that naturism appeals more to men than women. However, this is not necessarily the case. Now, there are suggestions on the page that women show no independent interest, but they have to be cajoled by their male partners, or groomed, as I would say. Many women also say that they were introduced to naturism by a husband or boyfriend and were hesitant. Accepting that men will have to work hard to get the women in their lives interested, the website offers persuasive strategies to try out, which they call a crib sheet, how to groom your girlfriend into doing something they hate. Right? It says, for all those guys we regularly see at events in clubs and on the forum who have a wife, partner, girlfriend, fiancé who finds it a challenge to share their interest in naturism, or perhaps just needs a little persuasion. The suggestions include telling the women that clothes can be kept on for many activities, and that they do not immediately have to go naked, or that a woman already involved can act as a buddy to the reluctant girlfriend. This sounds to me like prostitution and recruitment into prostitution. The gender imbalance problem is common in activities on the fringes of the sex entertainment industry, as you know, such as swinging and nightclubs, where inducements such as free entry for women have to be offered to get women into any of these places. The normalization of naturism has been greatly aided by the development of a considerable industry which provides holidays and venues directed to nudists. The industry has apparently become seriously profitable. Swimming pools and restaurants may offer nudist nights, for instance. I'm sure that's happening all over Australia. You will be able to find them if you are interested. Now, the ideology of naturism states that it's liberating for everyone to be able to spend our time outdoors with no clothes on. It may be that in the 1930s, when there was a growth in the practice, there was some truth to this. I don't exactly know. There was an enthusiasm for nudism in Nazi Germany, for instance. Robert Graves, in his fascinating book, The Long Weekend, about the 1930s in the UK, had a chapter with the wonderful title, Pacifism, Nudism and Hiking. It's pretty much my favourite book, chapter, Pacifism, Nudism and Hiking, which describes the zeitgeist of the 30s. And it's possible that nudism meant something different then. But now it's likely that nudism offers to men, mostly men, as women can be so reluctant, a way to engage in their sexual perversions in a socially acceptable fashion. There are 2 main perversions that are satisfied. Flashing or indecent exposure, i.e. get to expose their penises to women and children. And there's an understanding that men should not do erections, but some men have difficulty doing this, and they talk about the difficulty of not having erections. You can understand that. The other perversion is voyeurism or scopophilia, both terms for the way men gain pleasure from observing women naked or engaged in sexual acts. This perversion leads to peeping, pornography, upskirting, and so on. It's hugely important to men, and seems like other perversions to be completely absent among women. Women do not go out at night to find gaps in curtains they can peek through to look at men in states of undress. Now, men's indecent exposure and scopophilia have been partially decriminalised through the practice of men pretending to be women going naked into women's changing rooms and showers. So the normalisation of naturism also offers a massive opportunities to men which are unlikely to appeal to women. The promotion of naturism and its commercialisation make no mention of the problem that there can be no equality in the practice whatsoever. The existence of male domination and the sexual violence against women that results makes it foolish to imagine the woman's nakedness in front of men could be a safe and comfortable practice. There is some evidence from media articles that women suffer sexual harassment from men if they take part in the activity. The recent media article in France saying that women no longer wanted to go on the nude beaches, one quote, "Sometimes you will get men coming to sit too near you. I become hyper-vigilant when I see groups of young women as they usually get circled by men who will start acting up. It's right." Okay? Now, none of that is surprising. And there was similar stuff about Brighton, where I live. There's a nudist beach there, and women are saying all the same sorts of things. Yeah? Why would women be reluctant? I think it's impossible to imagine. Now, a recent article in The Guardian makes the difference between men and women over naturism clear. In the series A New Start After 60, in which the newspaper features people who start new jobs or hobbies, it features a man who became a naturist at 75. His wife refused to join in, but she still had to suffer it all. Apparently, at their late-night wedding, the man and most of the guests and celebrants were naked. That must have been distressing for his wife, who was not naked. For the man, Naturism offered the sexual pleasure of being able to look at naked women and show them his penis, whilst his embarrassed and reluctant wife looked on. Now, a good example of the differences between the meaning of naturism for men and women is that naked cleaning companies exist in the town in which I live. There is a naked cleaning company, and it advertises only for women because they have to be naked to do cleaning for men, and probably much more, and it's probably a front for prostitution. There are no cleaning companies that employ men who are naked cleaning for women. So difficult to understand them. Now, it's very clearly about men's voyeurism and humiliation for men. It's hard to take seriously the idea that naturism for women and men could be an equal experience. Women also differ from men in having been made more self-conscious throughout their lives. So there's a lot more I could say about this, but I need to get to them. So can I just say that at a conference last year, I met a woman who said she was brought up in a naturist family with her sister, and she said it was horrendous. So we always have to think about children. And in my book, Penile, Imperialism, I constantly come back to the children. The children reared with transvestites, the children who are reared with sadomasochists, and so on and so on, and the effect on their lives. But it's seen as a private space for them in which men can act out all of these behaviours and do whatever they like, which are often, of course, abusive. So I end the book by saying that feminists support the normalisation of men's abusive sexual behaviour in the past, as in the success against paedophilia in the 70s. We can do so again. It's just that the field is becoming rather full of an extraordinary number of the versions now, and it's pretty much everywhere you look. And so what we do need to know about, which is why I'm talking to you today, and we need to know